After the success of Railcar number 1 as a replacement vehicle for a steam locomotive hauled working on the County Donegal Railway in the northwest of Ireland in the mid-1920s, Henry Forbes, the manager of the line, he was very keen to increase the number, or to introduce new rail cars onto the narrow gauge network of about 125 route miles. So in 1926 he approached the general manager of the Derwent Valley Light Railway in England, in Yorkshire, because they had two English standard gauge rail cars that they were advertising for sale. And on the 21st of June, Henry Forbes actually visited York Layerthorpe, and inspected these two, what were described as Ford buses. They'd been bought a couple of years before as truck chassis, Ford lorry chassis, and then they'd had bodies fitted on them by a Leeds company, and together they cost them just over £1,000 to the Derwent Valley Light Railway, which was always impecunious, as so many of these small lines were. And they would run them in tandem, back to back, with the leading rail bus, Ford bus, hauling the other one, which presumably ran in neutral. But so Forbes was very interested in adding these to the County Donegal Railway, but of course they would have to be re-gauged down to 3-foot gauge from 4 foot 8.5, and but this would mean they would have a very high centre of gravity. So the idea then was to lower the bodies down into onto the chassis, onto the lower chassis, and they were eventually bought by Forbes from the Derwent Valley for under half their original cost, at £480, and the whole lot then was shipped over to Stranorla, and then from there they were taken down to Dundalk, where they were altered by the GNR at the GNR works there. And they finally arrived in back onto the railway by about October 1926, and they were numbers 2 and 3, and they went into service straight away. They were very popular, and the rear wheels were virtually concealed by the lower bodies, and they had a rather odd appearance. So here is railcar number 2 as rebuilt for the County Donegal Railway, and as you can see, it's in its original plum coloured livery, and I've got it just running fairly slowly there just at the moment, but it's a much larger vehicle than railcar number 1, and greater capacity for passengers. So this is showing the rather distinctive look of the vehicle. It was always known, or they became known as, both these, numbers 2 and 3, both became known as clocking hens, and in some books you'll see that written out as clucking hens, but that's because they don't realise that the term clocking hen is a local Donegal term for a broody hen. So it looks like the vehicle is a hen sitting down on an egg, trying to hatch it out. And as you can see, they overhung the 3-foot gauge track quite considerably either side, but nevertheless the centre of gravity was quite low because the body had been lowered so considerably, and where the change had been made to the vehicle to make sure that it could really operate successfully on the narrow gauge. So here it is, just going past Meanglass Halt on its way through to the Barnsmore Gap, and these were quite faster than railcar number 1. They could get to quite reasonable speeds, 20-30 miles an hour, as long as the track and the routeway allowed it. And number 2 was stabled at Glenties and worked to and from Glenties down to Stranora, and number 3 was used on the line from Stranora down to Strabane, the Finn Valley line, and also from Strabane up to Letterkenny. They both broke their axles fairly frequently, and this was probably due to the running on the County Donegal Railway, because when they ran on the Derwent Valley Light Railway they didn't have any such propensity. But nevertheless, they were very successful indeed, and certainly proved the great practicality of these rail cars. And this is railcar number 3 in its later livery. They lasted until about 1933, when they began to be they're just wearing out. They'd become obsolete. They'd actually been replaced by later rail cars that were faster, bigger, more commodious, more successful. But these were very much pioneer rail cars, and altogether I suppose they cost them less than the Derwent Valley Light Railway ever paid for these vehicles, and they're both officially withdrawn in 1934. In fact, Forbes told the GNR, that's the Great Northern Railway of Ireland, based at Dundalk, the GNR's accountant, that they are in a very bad condition. In fact, one is dismantled, and it would be money wasted trying to rejuvenate them, as they are out of date and most unattractive looking both inside and out. Now, given that Forbes was a great man for making, doing, mending and experimenting, that's quite an admission. And but nevertheless, during the 9 years of their operation, they did prove to be very successful. They did prove to Forbes that these sort of diminutive railcars could be of value, and they set the tone for future operations, and indeed for the introduction of new railcars that were going to follow on. So numbers 2 and 3, that's the first numbers 2 and 3, because once they withdraw, their numbers get reallocated. These were a significant development for the County Donegal Railway. So there we are. That's a brief opening, or brief introduction into their history, and that's coming up to the end of my video here on Railcars 2 and 3. Please subscribe to my channel. It's completely free and completely without obligation, but the more who subscribe, the more I'm encouraged to make more of these. And of course, these models are all available from my website, the details of which are at the end of this video. And so please subscribe, please keep going, please put a thumbs up if you like it, and please leave a comment either way, whether you do or you don't, and suggest to me perhaps other areas of railway history you might like to see covered. But I'm going to carry on with this series of Donegal railcars right the way through to number 20, and then maybe branch into something else.